All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And Lord willing, today we want to go into Second Esdras, the 3rd chapter. So we're just going to go right into it, and Lord willing to be edifying to the elect. All right. Now, Second Esdras, the 3rd chapter, as an overview, is pretty much Ezra making his, basically speaking his mind, and asking the Lord why it is that these heathens are allowed to continue the way they are, and yet we are being punished when we are the only ones that are truly the ones serving you. And it's an understandable point, right? Because we often feel like that as well too, right? When we're, sometimes you'll see how those that are doing unrighteousness are just allowed or permitted to continue on and continue in their wicked ways, and yet it's like there's no judgment for them. But that's a matter of patience. Now, real briefly, before starting, I want to get a quick precept that came to mind when I just mentioned this. In the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 8, verse 11, it says, "Because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil." So a part of the long suffering of the Lord is that you will have moments where it looks as though those that are doing wickedness are allowed to continue and prosper, and we that are striving for righteousness are the ones suffering. But that's a part of the long suffering of the Lord, and that's why the scriptures say that in your patience possess ye your souls. Okay, so this is the book of Second Esdras, chapter 3, verse 1. It says, "In the 30th year after the ruin of the city, I was in Babylon, and lay troubled upon my bed, and my thoughts came up over my heart." Now, what we know that when basically you had the prophet Jeremiah, Isaiah also prophesied this, but you had Jeremiah, mainly prophesying about the Babylonians and the Nebuchadnezzar coming to put us in captivity, and all of these things, which actually did happen. And at the appointed time, I believe at 586, that was when the Babylonians at that point totally destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the walls, and took us captives and all of that. So as Ezra is saying here, 30 years after that, he was in Babylon, and he laid troubled upon his bed. It says, "And my thoughts came up over my heart," his heart meaning his mind. Verse 2, "For I saw the desolation of Sion, and the wealth of them that dwelt at Babylon." So while he was in Babylon, because we were captives over there, he was seeing us in a destitute state, our land, our temple destroyed, and those that the Babylonians, which the Babylonians were not a one race people. Just like when you use the term Babylonians, it's like using the term Americans, because in America you classify the people here as Americans, but they're not all one people. You have African American, Chinese American, whatever American. So there's different communities or different nations of people all living here that may be classified as American. Well, it was similar back then in Babylon, because as a matter of fact, the ruling class in Babylon weren't even Cushites. They were Assyrians. Okay, Nebuchadnezzar and all the way on down to Belshazzar, they were Assyrians. So the ruling class of Babylon were Assyrians, not Syrians, Assyrians, two different nations. And then you had a mix of you had Kassites and Cushites and some Elamites and all of that in there. And at this point now you had Israelites, because we were captives there. So, but the point is that he says here, For I saw, verse 2, the desolation of Sion, and the wealth of them that dwell at Babylon. And my spirit was sore moved, so that I began to speak words full of fear to the Most High, and said, O Lord, who bearest rule, thou spakest at the beginning, when thou didst plant the earth, and that thyself alone, and commandest the people, and gavest a body unto Adam without soul, which was the workmanship of thine hands, and didst breathe into him the breath of life, and he was made living before thee. So Ezra is going to go into a recap of pretty much everything that has happened from the time of Adam up until his time to make his point. Now, when it says a body gave us unto Adam a body without soul, it doesn't, other translations will say lifeless body, but it doesn't mean in a literal sense, okay? Because when you're born, you got to have a spirit inside of your body, or else you're going to be dead. Now, Adam wasn't considered living before the Lord until something happened, which is going to go on to say, right? And gave us a body unto Adam without soul, which was the workmanship of thine hands. Because by the blueprints and the orders of the Lord, you had the creation of man, and then you had sex as an institution for procreation, and through the act of sex, you have the body that is then formed in order for the spirit to come within it. But it says here, and didst breathe into him the breath of life, and he was made living before thee. So that's how you know it's not literal, because Adam was alive before the Lord gave him the breath of life. So, you know, it doesn't mean that he was dead in a physical way, okay? But let's get a precept to back that up, and Lord willing, bring more clarity to that. This is in the book of Proverbs, and this is why the scriptures say, for precept must be upon precept. This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 21, verse 16. It says, the man that wandereth out of the way of understanding shall remain in the congregation of the dead. So if you use vice versa, him that has understanding, which in order to have understanding, you got to have knowledge and wisdom as well. So he that has that is going to be considered what? Living. Because he's not going to remain in the congregation of the dead. So he's going to be living. Now, when you go to, so keep that in mind. And when you go to the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 7, and right around the 24th verse, it says, for wisdom is more moving than any motion. She passeth and goeth through all things by reason of her pureness. For she is the breath of the power of God, and a pure influence flowing from the glory of the Almighty. Therefore can no defiled thing fall into her. So wisdom is also likened or spoken of as the breath of God. All right. And we know that he that has that wisdom is considered living, because he's no longer in the congregation of the dead. So when you read in the book of Revelation, the 11th chapter and the 8th verse, it says, their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city. That's not literal. Now, we at one point were a part of the dead body, meaning we were walking about without having the ways, the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, which would make us alive before living before him. This is why Yahweh Shai said, the words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. Right? So when we partook, when we heard this word and it dwelt within us, that's when we in essence became living before the Lord. So going back to 2nd Esdras chapter 3, it says, verse 5, and gave us a body unto Adam without soul, which was the workmanship of thine hands, and didst breathe into him the breath of life, and he was made living before thee. So in essence, the Lord gave Adam the ways of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding of righteousness that would make him living. But what happened? It says, verse 6, and thou leddest him into paradise, which thy right hand had planted, before the before the earth came forward. And unto him thou gavest commandment to love thy way. So what is the way of the Lord? The way of the Lord is righteousness. So in righteousness there are do's and don'ts. There are things you do that make you righteous, and there are also things that you stay away from that make you righteous, right? When you learn righteousness, you're learning things that you are supposed to do and things you're supposed to stay away from that'll make you righteous. So he gave and gave us, and unto him thou gavest commandments to love thy way, which in the book of John, it tells you that the love of the Lord is the keeping of his commandments. It says, which he transgressed, and immediately thou appointedst death in him and in his generations, of whom came nations, tribes, people, and kindreds out of number. So Adam, when he transgressed, it means that Adam sinned. All right. And the scriptures tell you that through sin, death entered into the world. So we know Adam sinned because it says right when he transgressed, immediately thou appointedst death in him. So that was the point where death entered into our world. Because the Lord made Adam to be, or the Lord made man to be immortal. But what would make you immortal if you don't sin? But the Lord still made us subject to vanity. So the Lord made us, he gave us the ways of righteousness, but he didn't make us sin-proof. Meaning that the Lord didn't build us in a way where it would be impossible to go off. And that was for a purpose. Because in the ultimate game plan, Adam had to go off for us to then, fall and learn all of these things. And then the same Adam came back and was made perfect. So when Adam went off, which was Yahweh Shai, right? We all fell, we all suffered the consequences. And when he came back to make it right, we're all going to be blessed and partake of the gift of that. That is why the nation of Israel are going to, when we go into the kingdom, none of us are going to die anymore. Just like we became subject to death because of Adam's error. So he came back as Yahweh Shai perfectly to fix that. The first Adam and the last Adam. So it says here, verse 8, and every people walked after their own will and did wonderful things before thee and despised thy commandments. When it says wonderful, it doesn't mean wonderful in the sense that you think of today. Today you think of wonderful and you say, you think of something positive. Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. No, what the word wonderful really just goes into, when you look up the word wonder, one of the definitions in the online etymology is to be astonished, which is like surprising. But in a nutshell, people were doing after their own will. They were doing whatever they wanted to do. That's why in the book of Genesis, the Lord said, matter of fact, let's get it real quick. I think it's Genesis, the 6th chapter. If I'm not mistaken, bear with me 1 second while I make my way to the verse. Yep, I think it's Genesis 6, verse, yep. Genesis 6 and 5. And God saw, which the word God here is in all caps, which is this. When you go into the Hebrew there, it'll say Yahweh. Typically, where you see Lord, L-O-R-D in all caps, that's in the Hebrew is Yahweh. And when you see God, G-O-D, it'll be like powers or power, right? Allah or Allahayim. But when you see G-O-D in all caps, that is also in the Hebrew Yahweh. So in here, it says, and the Lord or Yahweh saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So going back to the book of 2nd Esdras chapter 3, verse 8, and every people walked after their own will, and did wonderful things before thee, and despised thy commandments. And again, in process of time, thou broughtest the flood upon those that dwell in the world, and destroyedst them, which we know happened during the time of Noah. It says, and it came to pass in every of them, that as death was to Adam, so was the flood to these. So what was death to Adam? Death was a punishment for Adam's disobedience, just like the flood was a punishment for the wickedness, or the disobedience or the wickedness of those that were dwelling on the earth at that time. Carrying on. All right. Carrying on, it says here in verse 11, nevertheless, one of them thou leftest, namely Noah, with his household, of whom came all righteous men. And when it says that, it means Noah through Shem, through the chosen line, is where all the righteous men came from. Okay? So like, I'm just, being alert over here. You know what? Let me make sure that I'm securing things that need to be secured. Things like parking spots. Because, bear with me 1 second. Right, so Adam, like in Noah, through his son Shem, is where the the seed of the righteous came from. Okay, so just because it says Noah, from where all the righteous came from, that doesn't include Ham and Japheth. They're heathens, right? They are heathens, and that's where the heathens come from. Let me just pull up right there, right there. All right, cool, good stuff. Okay, so continuing on in 2nd Esdras chapter 3, verse 12. It says, and it happened that when they that dwelt upon the earth began to multiply, and had gotten them many children, and were a great people, they began again to become ungodly, to be more ungodly than the first. Now when they lived so wickedly before thee, thou didst choose thee a man from among them, whose name was Abraham, right? Which his name originally was Abram, right? Father exalted, Abaram, and then it got changed to Abraham, the father of a multitude, all right, or father of many nations. So Abram, right? Because, and you know that wickedness was going on at a super high level, because that's why the Lord had to separate Abraham from his relatives. Okay, that's why the Lord took him first out of Ur of the Chaldees, and then, because even Abraham's father, I believe his name was Terah, he was also into that idol worship and all of that. And when Abraham and his family went to Syria, where later on became called Padan Aram, right? Where Laban, Jacob went to where Laban was. Those Laban and Rachel and all of them, they came from the same stock as Abraham. But Abraham continued on from Syria to the land of Canaan, but some of the people that were with him remained in Syria. That's why that's why Rebekah was able to send Jacob over there, because she had relatives over there. Right? And as a matter of fact, that's where Abraham sent his servant, I believe his name was Eliezer, to go and get Rebekah from. But even they were into idol worship, because what happened when Jacob got there? Rachel and Leah, Rachel stole her father's idol and then hid it. So they were into that kind of stuff. So that's why the Lord had to separate Abram or Abraham from that. So it says, where are we at? Yep, verse 13. Now when they lived so wickedly before thee, thou didst choose thee a man from among them, whose name was Abraham. Him thou lovest, and unto him only thou shewedst thy will. and madest an everlasting covenant with him, promising him that thou wouldest never forsake his seed. This is why the Lord always makes reference, and even some of our forefathers called back to the remembrance of the Lord, the promise which he made with our fathers, because the Lord is not a man that he should lie. He is a man of his word, and he made that promise which would hold him whenever he would get furious or pissed, and would put us in straits and punish us. He would punish us in measure, because he remembered the promise that he made with our forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So it says, continuing in verse 16, and unto him thou gavest Isaac, and unto Isaac thou gavest Jacob and Esau. As for Jacob, thou didst choose him to thee, and put by Esau. And so Jacob became a great multitude. So out of the two, the separation was, the Lord said, Jacob is here, he's sanctified, he's mine, I'm gonna deal with him. But Esau, you could go somewhere else. That's why it tells you in the book of Malachi that the Lord loved Esau and Salakia, that was Satan. The Lord loved Jacob and hated Esau. Satan loves to pop up around that time. Whenever you're talking about these Esau or Cain, or he likes to pop up and try to get you to slip up and say the wrong thing. But you all know that I meant to say Jacob. It's all right. Slip with the tongue. So seed out of Egypt, which are the seed of Jacob, because Jacob's name got changed to Israel. And so the children of Israel were literally the children of Israel. And when we went down into Egypt, we became a nation. We became more and more and more. And then the Lord, through the hand of Moses and Aaron, delivered us out of Egypt. So it goes on to say, verse 17, and it came to pass, when thou leddest his seed out of Egypt, thou broughtest them up to the Mount Sinai. And bowing the heavens, thou didst set fast the earth, movedst the whole world, and madest the depths to tremble, and troublest the men of that age. Yeah, because that's why the Lord was known as Al-Shaddad, a demon-like power. And also Al-Shaddiyah, the almighty power, right? Or the power almighty, because of the different miraculous feats that he was doing on behalf of us and against all those that came against us. Because remember, the Lord fought for us not only against the Egyptians, but against all the neighboring nations that came against us while we were going to the land of Canaan. Don't forget about how the Lord gave us commandment, and through the Spirit we shouted down the walls of Jericho. So it goes on to say, verse 19, and thy glory went through 4 gates of fire, and of earthquake, and of wind, and of cold, which are the different elements, that thou mightest give the law unto the seed of Jacob, and diligence unto the generation of Israel. Yeah, and the scriptures tell you that the Lord hath his way in the whirlwind. And remember, when the Lord tried to come down, or when he came down, and the people saw the glory of the Lord after he had told them to sanctify themselves, the Lord said that he would come and talk with Moses in the presence of the people, so that they would believe that Moses is truly sent by the Lord. But when he came with the fire and the tempest and the shaking and the loudness, the people were afraid. But it goes on to say, verse 20, and reading the end of verse 19 again, it says, that thou mightest give the law unto the seed of Jacob, and diligence unto the generation of Israel. And yet tookest thou not away from them a wicked heart, that thy law might bring forth fruit in them. So as the scriptures say, for finding fault with them, right? The reason the Lord is going to make a new covenant and put the laws within us was because the laws are perfect, but we are not perfect. So as Ezra is saying here, you gave them the law, but you didn't take away the wicked heart, the heart that is subject to vanity, right? Jeremiah 17:9. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who may know it? Yeah, that's the stony heart. And the Lord didn't take that away, as Ezra is saying. So because he didn't take that away, the law that he put within us, or the law that he gave us, couldn't really bear fruit, because we wouldn't be able to keep it how it should be kept, and be able to reap the benefits of that. So it says, verse 21, for the first Adam, bearing a wicked heart, transgressed, and was overcome, and so be all they that are born of him. So the first Adam, that was Yahushua, that was made, man was made to be immortal, but man wasn't made to never be able to sin. That's why it says in the book of Romans 8 that the creature not willing was made subject to vanity. Because at that time, the Lord set it up to where we would eventually end up going off, and that would lead us down this path in order to fulfill the story or to fulfill his will. Come back a little bit. All right. Okay. So continuing on, right, verse 21, for the first Adam, bearing a wicked heart, transgressed and was overcome, and so be all they that are born of him. Right. So all of us are made in the sense, since we come from Adam, so we are not perfect. No matter how hard you try, we're striving for perfection, but we're still subject to vanity, just like he was. Because had he not been subject to vanity, he would have never went off. But that's why this time the Lord is going, that's why this time Yahushua came right, perfect. And that's why the Apostle Paul mentioned that we gained the victory through Yahushua. Just like we gained the first defeat through the first Adam, we're going to gain this victory through the last Adam, which is Yahushua. So he has always led the way. He has always been the first, the author and finisher of our faith, the Ah and the Tha, the beginning and the end. And in the kingdom, or really starting when the Lord comes back and delivers his elect and changes our bodies, we're not going to be subject to sinning anymore. That wicked heart is going to be completely taken away. So it says, verse 22, thus infirmity was made permanent, and the law also in the heart of the people with the malignity of the root, which means the evil or the ill will. So the law was in us, but so was the wickedness of our hearts, the evil. It says, so that the good departed away and the evil abode still. And that's why our people started to become more and more wicked. It says, verse 23, so the times passed away and the years were brought to an end. Then didst thou raise thee up a servant called David, whom thou commandest to build a city unto thy name, and to offer incense and oblation unto thee therein. When this was done many years, then they that inhabited the city forsook thee, and in all things did even as Adam and his generations had done, for they also had a wicked heart. So what did they do? They ended up, so that shows you that in essence, what Jake did in going off, what did Jake do? They were worshiping idols. They were, doing left-handed practices, not keeping the ways of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, right? That's what they did. That caused the Lord to bring destruction upon Jake, right? Well, here Ezra is saying that whatever Jake was doing that caused judgment to be brought upon them, that was the same thing that Adam and his generation did. So that goes to show you that Adam and his generation sinned. And in order to sin, you need to have the laws. You need to have the commandments. So continuing on, it says, verse 27, and so thou gavest thy city over into the hands of thine enemies. Are their deeds then any better? Are their deeds then any better that inhabit Babylon, that they should therefore have dominion over Sion? So now Ezra's making his point. He said all of this, and he said, all right, and then because of that, You basically gave us over to the Babylonians, right? So are the works of the Babylonians any better than us, that you've given them dominion over us? Verse 29, for when I came thither and had seen impieties, which is ungodliness, without number, then my soul saw many evildoers in this 30th year, so that my heart failed me. For I have seen how thou sufferest them sinning, and hast spared wicked doers, and hast destroyed thy people, and hast preserved thine enemies, and has not signified it. So Ezra is mad because he's saying, well, you're allowing these people who don't worship you, they don't serve you, they commit, all sorts of impious acts, ungodliness, and yet you're punishing us and you're sparing them. It says, and when you read in the book of Malachi, it tells you what? I have said that I loved you, but you say, wherein hast thou loved us? Salak. All right. So continuing, it says here, verse 3. I do not remember how this way may be left. Are they then of Babylon better than they of Zion? Or is there any other people that knoweth thee beside Israel? Or what generation hath so believed thy covenants as Jacob? And yet their reward appeareth not, and their labor hath no fruit. For I have gone here and there through the heathen, and I see that they flow in wealth, and think not upon thy commandments. Weigh thou therefore our wickedness now in the balance, and theirs also that dwell in the world, and so shall thy name nowhere be found but in Israel. So Ezra is saying, yeah, if you were to compare us in a scale on one end, and then in the other part, the rest of the nation, you'll find out that we are the ones that carry your name. Verse 35, or when was it that they which dwell upon the earth have not sinned in thy sight? Or what people hath so kept thy commandments? Thou shalt find that Israel by name hath kept thy precepts, but not the heathen. So, and that's the end of the chapter. But in essence, Ezra is basically, he's seeing the wealth and the flourishing of the Babylonians, and he is seeing the destitute state that we are in, that Israel is in, and he was grieved because he was saying, well, Lord, we are the ones that serve you. We are the ones that you put your name in. We are the ones that keep your commandments. These heathens, they don't care. They're not following your ways. They're not keeping your commandments. So why is it that we are suffering? We're not having any reward. We're subject onto them, and they're flourishing. Look at the riches they have. They have us in captivity. They have the golden vessels. They're living without a care, without worries. So how is it? Have they not sinned? Are they not sinners? Are they better than us? Are they perfect? Why are they getting a better treatment than we, your chosen people? That was what Ezra was feeling. And that's what led to the rest of the chapters that follow, when the Lord sent the angel Uriel onto him to basically come and hit him with the Job style, right? Because Job was also vexed in his spirit, and he started speaking his heart to the Lord, and then the Lord had to come and in essence check him, in a way he checked him. Well, you speaking as though you some, like you like all this. The Lord, in essence, the Lord is saying, I have my reasons. And this also goes to show why it's written in Isaiah 55 that your ways are not my ways, neither are my ways your ways. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are the Lord's ways than us. But Ezra found that out. By the end of Second Esdras, he understood. All right. But anyway, yeah, that was pretty much it for the chapter. Lord willing, that was edifying and clear to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.